Da-da! So today I wanted to talk to you about science because I've gotten messages and discussions about science, and I think a lot of people like to say that spirituality is a science, that divination or whatever component or tools are like scientific. Every time I get into this conversation, my question all the time is, what if it wasn't? Is the fact that we say that, Kemetic spirituality, for example, is scientific, makes it better? Is that why there is a need to mash together spirituality, that spirituality has to be scientific? Does spirituality have to be scientific? To me, I think not. And to me, I think science still has a lot to caught up to spirituality. There's a lot of things that are spiritual, there's a lot of spiritual tools that science hasn't even started to figure it out. You see those articles about meditation makes you feel better, meditation makes you do this and that and that. Those are articles written, in the past decade or in the past century, but meditation has been around for thousands and thousands of years, just to say the least. And I think sometime for the spiritualist, or for some of people, having that label of scientific make them feel good, make them feel like, okay, I'm now, it's okay for me to indulge in that because there's a scientific basis behind it. Now that science has proven that meditation enables you to feel better, now I can actually figure out what it is and start practicing it. I've never had the need to label it as scientific, as something that other people need to agree with me about, because this is what a science is all about. Science, when the concept of science is that providing you data that everyone can kind of agree about, and data that is kind of like more of a mainstream, kind of like more of a quote-unquote objective. And I only say quote-unquote objective because every study can yield the results that you want based on how you conduct it. Okay, so sometimes this data is just flat out restricted to a specific group of people. It's not applicable to everybody. Even when you have like any type of medicine, they will tell you in the back the potential side effect that you can have. And it's not because you personally don't have the side effects that no one else is having them. And the reason why they even have the side effects is because some people did have those. And I think that's important. I just say that it is not universal. Science is not universal. Science is not applicable to everyone. And so is spirituality in a lot of many ways. We don't have the same perception about different things, and I think like a lot of people would like all of us to be the same, all of us to think the same, and all of us to experience the same thing. And even when we take something like love, we may all have a notion to what love is, but individually we experience it differently. The way we feel when we are in love, when we want to express love, is not the same when you go from one person to the other. It's not going to be shown the same way. It's not going to be expressed the same way. The same words are not going to be used. The way somebody who's called nerdy is going to express their love, their affection, may be very totally different for somebody who is, from a native tribe, or for somebody who's living in an urban area. And I think that's not something to shade upon. It's more something to be grateful for, because it enables you to see the richness of love and to see the variation and the different expression that it brings to us. It's just like washing the ocean. If you've ever been to the ocean, you can see that there's thousands and thousands of waves, and not one wave is the same as the next one. And so I think that this is my own perception of it. It's just like your way of expressing your spirituality, even if it may be in the same belief or in the same religion as someone else, your expression may be completely different. And that's what, to me, makes it refreshing. It makes it refreshing because you bring that inner source from yourself, that inner uniqueness that you have, that inner voice. You bring it your own voice, you bring it your own twist. You're not just trying to copy what someone else is doing and and trying to be them and trying to act like them. You're actually living what you indulge in and what you consider to be your own spirituality. So to me, I don't really look at spirituality as a science. I think there's a lot of videos trying to demonstrate to you that science in a lot of different areas is trying to catch up, has caught on different topics and different elements and different perspective. But I think to me that science is always kind of like a few steps behind spirituality. The fact that, for example, someone will say, when you're dreaming, you are on a specific vibration, a specific wave, and the machine, you can have an actual machine that will be attached to you that can calibrate this wave and that can report on them. But one thing that I will say, that those waves that you're going to see on the screen will not tell you about the experience I'm having. They will not tell you about the specific dream I'm having, where I'm going, what is going on. They will not tell you about that. And that's a fallacy about science. It can sometimes make you think that you know it all, you understand it all, you got it, when in fact you're only scraping the surface. Well, in fact, you don't know what this person is experiencing in their dreams. You don't know what they're seeing and where they've been and what they're doing. It only gives you a very, very small glimpse of what is actually happening. And getting on that same vibe from looking at the machine and say, okay, now we got you to deep sleep or whatever, beta wave, whatever they call it, there's not guarantee that you will have the same experience. There's not even guarantee that you will even get to dream. And that's kind of where I'm getting at. Not really... I like science. I like the fact that there are things that we can observe objectively without, pushing in our own kind of judgment or our own opinion on certain things, and we can look at it detached and see, how many people perceive it the same way. However, I'm not just sitting around waiting for science to confirm the experiences that I've had, to confirm the experience that I'm living. There's many things that I've lived through and that I've seen and that I've felt that science has no answer for them, that has no explanation, and sometimes the easy route is just to say that, oh, you made it up, or it's a fiction of your imagination, which is not even a bad thing at all, and I will get that in a different video today. But it's that notion that whatever you're going through, until it has been verified by science, you're not really going through them. You may be perceiving it or having a different perception because you don't have the scientific basics and notion into it. And I think sometimes to me it's kind of interesting to see some of the practitioners that are really ingrained in saying this is scientific. It has to be scientific. It has to have that label of scientific, kind of like that badge on top of it, that label on top of it, that recognition, that validation from the science world. I don't really subscribe to that. Even when you look at Egyptian spirituality and people label it, it's a Kemetic science. The spirituality is a science. I understand where they're coming from, but to me, spirituality is not a science. Spirituality is in a category of its own, and science is just trying to catch on to that. Science is, I would say, 4 or 5 steps behind it, and sometimes the moment it catch on to it, there are new things. We discover new things, we explore new things, and people are exploring the spirituality all the time. So it's ever evolving based on a faster pace than science, which depends on research funding, what people are into this decade or that decade, and so forth and so on. And I think spirituality has always been at the forefront. Spirituality has always been step ahead, simply because it's been there since the dawn of days, when there were fewer human beings. And one of the notion of science is that sometimes you have to have a certain critical mass of objective observation for it to actually take floated, for it to be accepted. Any type of scientific observation has to be recognized by a certain group of people or a certain amount of people in order to be considered to be scientific. So that's my take on it. I really don't seek or wait for scientific validation to tell me that meditation is good, or to tell me that certain herbs that I'm using have those properties. And even if you go to native tribes, indigenous tribes, they're not going to be sitting there telling you about the property of that and the propensity and the element that compose this and that and that. A lot of them will talk to you through stories, because this is easier to understand. It's easier for even a child to comprehend, to assimilate, and to run with the information, run with the knowledge, run with the wisdom. They are not going to tell you about H2O. They're going to talk to you about water, the property of water, what they can do with water, how they can look at there and use water for divination, use water for inspiration, for creativity. They're not going to sit there and start talking to you about the vibration of water and the scientific element you can put into that. And I know there have been a lot of studies done in that context, especially in the context of water, where there have been scientific studies that can bring you the data that actually verify what has been known for thousands and thousands of years. So to me, when there is some type of scientific breakthrough that comes out, to me it's just like, okay, whatever. This community have known this for years and years and years, and we've seen that with the Dogon tribe, for example. A tribe that had knowledge about solar systems that were not even in the purview of the technology at the time. And then the scientists came back and said, oh yeah, you're actually right. There is a planet called Sirius B. There is a planet that's in that vicinity, in the little thing that you showed from your ancestral knowledge. And that's why, to me, I follow science here and there. I look at what they're doing and how far they're coming up, but I really don't use that to validate what I believe or to validate my personal experience. This is also why through these videos, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm basically sharing. If you would like to know more, I can discuss what I think, what I do. But I'm not trying to convince you by no means, because I know that you cannot be in my own shoes. The type of experiences that I've had, I don't expect you to have lived the same, and I don't expect you to even try or want to understand. But I think we can share, and I can also understand that there are experiences that I may never understand. I work, for example, with a lot of women who have trauma, sexual trauma particularly, and I've never experienced that type of trauma. So I haven't lived that. I haven't embodied that. However, I can sense it. Now it's been quite a while since I've started doing this work, and now I can sense it from far. I can sometimes have this kind of like feeling that this person is dealing with this particular issue, because I've seen it manifest in so many different forms, but I've never embodied it. And so I cannot pretend that I know all about it, that I know all about what it feels like to be in that space. But what I do know is how to deal with that space and how to get out of that space from the experiences I've had, working and accompanying some people who are going through that. And at any time, I wasn't waiting for some, scientific data to come back. Some of the clients that I do have that work with trauma are followed by psychiatrists or psychologists or therapists. And the reason that they come to me is simply because that extra stuff that the therapist is just not getting, the extra dream that you are having and that you are feeling, the feelings that you may have, the thoughts that you may have, the therapist is just not getting, because the therapist is looking at it from a scientific angle, is looking at it sometimes from a different cultural angle that is not always supportive of the culture of the person, of the system of beliefs. So that's where most of the time I come in. So we work on these from that perspective, from that particular angle, and they are able to use certain tools and still be followed by the medical doctor and by the scientific research that come along with it, because the scientific data that's going to be generated from that, and the psychiatrist or the therapist is able to see if there's any progression in what they are trying to do. So I don't really expect science to understand or to prove whether it is religious beliefs or any form of spiritual belief, because to me, science is always steps behind. Now, there may be part of you, some of you who believe that, spirituality is actually scientific, that everything needs to be proven, that everything has to be proven, or that everything can be proven. And that's fine. And I will, yeah, if you are open to it, to share why you believe that is so, and what drove you to that conclusion, leave a comment down below. But to me, it's just that there are certain things that I don't expect science to prove. Where I go during my dreams, beyond this world, beyond this galaxy, and what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing, I don't expect science to believe. I don't even expect science to perceive what I'm perceiving, even right here, right now, on this particular planet, on this particular earth. My experience to me is just mine to have. And if you may have other people, good, but it is not to rally other people into my own reality. I'm just here to experience what I experience, and I'm satisfied with that. I'm satisfied that it is just my experience. I don't need it to be a scientific fact. I don't need it. This is why also I don't wrestle with people. I don't argue with people. If you don't think that this is the case, then great. You don't have to. I'm not trying to ingrain you into my own reality. A lot of people look at my channel and say, hey, this is really great, this is entertaining. I never heard of this before, and I'm just curious, and help me kind of envision what's out there. And that's kind of how I take it. I listen to a lot of people on YouTube. I don't have to agree with everyone. And sometimes it's just a matter of saying, oh, what's out there? What are people doing out there? What are people believing out there? How are their experiences? And that stands there. I don't need to challenge the experience. I don't need to validate that either. And sometimes it is interesting to come across a video or come across somebody who's kind of experiencing the similar things that you are, who's kind of having a similar experience. And that's kind of sometimes it pushes you to fall into validation, because you're just like, oh yeah, something I was doubting about, this is kind of like this person also experiences the same thing, so it kind of gives you some form of comfort. And I think that's more when you are really early in your path, when you are still, weighing down different things and making sure that you're not going mad or insane. But I think as you progress and as you get more confident and you start understanding certain things for your own self, that validation really becomes second. That validation really isn't at the forefront and isn't something that you look for or want to have. And that's where kind of the space where I'm at. It's really always interesting to exchange with people, and I always say exchange because I don't really do debate. I understand that not everyone will have the same experience with me, or even understand the slighter things of what I've experienced. And so I don't need the validation of science. If you tell me, oh, this is scientifically impossible, then I say, okay, that's fine. For me, it doesn't have to be scientifically possible for me to experience it. Okay, I don't have to necessarily find ways to explain that to you scientifically. And I think that's kind of like some of the brothers and sisters out there are doing that. They are trying to, I think, do the bridge between spirituality and science, and being able to show you how certain spiritual tools can be explained in a scientific way. And I think that's, to me, how I perceive it. It's explaining spiritual tools in a scientific way, just as you can explain them in a religious way or in a philosophical way. There are many ways that you can explain these tools. I don't think there's one way that's better than another. I think some things speak louder or resonate better with certain people. Some individuals need that scientific kind of logic and analysis for them to even grasp the concept of it, while others just need the story. Sometimes, when the Dragon was talking about their ancestors coming from a different solar system and explaining where that solar system was, they weren't talking about protons and years of light and distance and all that stuff. They were giving you a story that's linked to their ancestors and that's linked to their existence. And I think the person who's assessing it from a scientific perspective nowadays, you're going to say, this galaxy is, this far away. We can test that the distance is this and that, how long it takes for light to come from their place to ours, and so forth and so on. The Dogon did not need that. In most of African spirituality, you won't find that kind of scientific language. Even in Kemetic Kemetic spirituality, you don't find that kind of language, because that was not the purpose. The knowledge speaks for itself. Either it resonates with you or it doesn't. And I think the people who are bridging or doing that bridge are creating, just expanding it so that more people can actually try to grasp it, because there are some people who are really, really into science and who are looking through that scientific glass, so they need to have this kind of like translation into their scientific language, into the scientific knowledge, so that they can grasp what's going on. But I'm not one of those, and I think sometimes stories give you a lot more leeway to add on to what is given to you. You know, we give you a story that gives you knowledge with a resolution, or there's a conflict, there's a resolution, and there's a body there of knowledge and wisdom. And because it is a story, you can easily identify yourself, you can easily make it yours. You can easily put yourself into that and add on to it, build onto it, and integrate it in your life much easier than when it is a physical or a scientific principle, which is kind of sometimes foreign to you, which is kind of like outside of you, which is much harder to integrate that within your own self and meditate with that. For some people, some other people, it's easy. That's the best language they will understand. Whenever you have some scientific validation, that's what they needed to have the go. So, you know, they will wait for meditation to have some studies that show that meditation has, you know, some properties before they will even entertain the idea of meditating and try it into that. So maybe that's your case as well. Maybe, I mean, everyone is taking different paths, so it's normal that you have different avenues to be able to understand different things. For me, it's just like science is great, but I don't need science in order to validate what I believe or to validate what I have experienced at all. So thank you for having been with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
La 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 la.